Breitling makes some of the most iconic pilots and divers watches in the world, but arguably just as important as figuring out what's the best Breitling to buy is which ones you should avoid. So stick around because we're going to help you find the perfect watch. So, Justin, Breitling, I think this is probably one of the blue chip luxury brands.
Absolutely.
Everyone knows Breitling, even if they're not a watch person. And honestly, it's for a good reason. It's not just because they are one of the most famous names in Swiss luxury watches, but they have such a great history. Like the chronograph, the 2-button chronograph, the chronograph that we all know today, invented by Breitling.
When you say chronograph, I think Breitling.
Yeah, they're the grandfather of the chronograph. And I mean, there were chronographs before, but it wasn't in the 2-button format. The one where you can start and stop, reset independently, that's Breitling. And basically, that influence has never stopped. The chronographs being made today, unless it's some like split seconds or something, still use the 2-button format, whether it's automatic, quartz, that's still the de facto.
They do. They got a lot of history, a lot of heritage. They've been around since 1884. Basically pioneered aviation watches and pilot watches. So yeah, there's a lot to go over and a lot to love, honestly.
Yeah, back then they were also making tools. So 1884, this is long before electricity, but I think during the 50s was a kind of a golden era for them. We have the Navitimer in 52. That was basically a purpose-built pilot's watch. They took an analog flight computer and then combined it with a chronograph to make the Navitimer as we know it. But some of that even dates back further, that this wasn't the first watch to have a slide rule bezel. It was something they refined, and then in the 50s they really hit their stride, and a lot of the icons we know today, like the Superocean and the Navitimer, had their start then, and they still remain today. I think it's impossible to have a conversation about Breitling without starting with the Navitimer. I'm probably going to be on every single list of like, what's the best Breitling, what's the most famous Breitling, what's the most recognizable Breitling. It's going to be the Navitimer.
The Navitimer, right? I mean, that's the headliner. It's my personal favorite Breitling. It's just, one, I like the aesthetics, I like the look, I like the feel, I like the heritage. I mean, there's so much about it to love.
Just looking at it, you know it does something. As mentioned, 1952 is when the lineage of this started. The slide rule bezel actually came about before that in the 40s on the Chronomat of all things, but this is before the Chronomat, and we're going to touch on the Chronomat later, but they saw this as a very useful, it's basically a slide rule calculator. It's just a logarithmic calculator. And so when they adopted it for the Navitimer, they made it able to calculate everything from average speeds to fuel use and everything.
All kinds of stuff.
You can use it to calculate conversion rates for currencies.
Yeah, I mean, it's insanely useful and complicated. I mean, when it was first introduced and invented, I feel like it had a lot more use. Nowadays, technology has surpassed. There's much easier ways to, come up with those calculations.
Like a calculator.
You can. I mean, your smartphone, your watch now, I guess your Apple Watch could do it a little faster, but it served its purpose. And for me, I mean, when I think of tool watches and, the history of tool watches, that it might be the ultimate tool watch. I mean, at its time, right? Like today, clearly the technology has surpassed, but at its time, there might not have been a watch that you can do more with than the Breitling Navitimer.
Yeah, I would say that's a fair assessment, and I mean now it's like their icon. It's an instantly recognizable aesthetic that is synonymous with Breitling, but it wasn't made to look that way. It wasn't made to look busy or anything. It was literally made to be functional, and of course now it's a celebrated style, but it's arguably the modern Navitimer's never been more capable. It's now has their BO1 movement in-house, column wheel, vertical clutch. It's widely considered to be one of the best mass-produced automatic chronographs in existence right now.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's so good that Tudor still uses it.
Yeah. I feel like it was, when they were designing it, they weren't designing it to look the way, like you said, they weren't designing it to look the way it does. They were designing it to be as capable as possible. How can we fit every tool, every calculation that we possibly can into this watch? And that leads me to one of my points where, maybe if you're, we're trying to talk about the best and the, what works and what doesn't. I don't want to say the worst because, I mean, there's not really any worst here, but it is a very busy watch. It's very complicated, it's very busy. I know a couple collectors who it's just not their thing, right? Like they're just not into a lot of numbers, a lot of dials, a lot going on. Then the Navitimer might not be a choice for you.
I've written numerous articles on how to use the Navitimer's bezel, and I I would have to like play around with it and struggle and be like, oh right, okay, line up with here. It's not a straightforward thing to use. And I think for people who want, I mean, if you're gonna get a Breitling, I understand the sentiment to get a chronograph, and I think a great alternative to the Navitimer, which has a history even longer than the Navitimer, is the Chronomat.
Yes.
This is currently the 44 millimeter current production version of the Chronomat in a chronograph format. You can get them in other configurations if you want. But this was before, in the 40s, before there was even a Navitimer. The original Chronomat was a chronograph for mathematicians, hence the Chronomat name. And obviously that's not a very sexy like type of goal in the same way pilots, divers, whatever. And so in the 80s, they overhauled the Chronomat to be like a multi-purpose sports watch, which it is today.
Right.
And I think it does that really, really well.
It does. Exactly, just to my point, you know, if the Navitimer is something that's not really your style, but you do like Breitling and you do like a chronograph and you want something that's a little more, you know, works a little better in every situation, the Chronomat's a great choice.
You get more water resistance. Not having the bezel be something that turns part of the dial, you can obviously make it a lot more water resistant. The rotating bezel is just a regular 60-minute timing bezel, so kind of like a dive watch.
Yeah, works
you
like any
still
dive
get a 12-hour chronograph, still get a date display, still get a tachymeter printed along the dial, so it offers all the same core functionality, but you get more water resistance, arguably a less busy, more traditional aesthetic, and most importantly, these are functions that people know how to use without having to like reference the manual or read one of my old articles. So I think for a lot of people, it has just as rich of a history. It's not as iconic, and because it also changed designs in the 80s, it's not as iconic, it's not as recognizable, but it might be one of the best suited Breitling chronographs for everyday life.
I agree 100%. I think it's a fantastic choice. I love the chronograph. I mean, I'm a chronograph fan anyway, so I don't meet a whole lot that I don't fall in love with, but I love it. I think it's a great, like just a great general sports chronograph, right? It's got that tool watch feel, it's got the sports look. There's a lot of different iterations of it, so depending on your style, there's tons of different options, tons of different variations in terms of aesthetics and functionality that, you know, I feel like just about anyone can find one that fits the wrist.
Yeah, like this is the Chronograph Chronomat. This is probably the one everyone thinks of. You still get the same BO1 movement, but if you didn't want this, you could just get like a GMT or a simple three-hander. It's more of a design at this point rather than just a singular watch, and I guess the same goes for the Navitimer. You can get a time-only or time and date Navitimer. But what I like about the Chronomat is this one doesn't have it, although the strap alludes to it. It has the Rouleau bracelet on the current ones, which recalls the design from the 80s, and it's so different than the standard like slant link you see on all of these others, that it kind of makes it feel a little more dressy, a little bit more intricate, bit like a piece of jewelry, the bullet bracelet as it's often called. And that's something that just stands out among the current Chronomat versus all of the other models. But I think moving up the like tool-orientedness in the different direction, if the Chronomat's the midpoint, like the go everywhere, do everything, it's sporty but kind of dressy, if less fragile than the Navitimer but still a chronograph, I think the Superocean would probably be the most rugged core collection. It's their dive watch.
Right, now we're getting into dive watch category, and the Superocean's great. I'm just gonna say it. I like the Superocean. I think it's a fantastic watch. Like, let's look at this one. I mean, just aesthetics alone, like when I get a dive watch, I mean, there's times I want something really sleek and refined, but this is a tool watch. It's a chunk of metal on my wrist. Like, it looks and feels like it. 1,000-meter depth rating
on the Superocean 44 as well, which and a helium escape valve if you ever need that. But like, that's a whopper of a depth rating, and it's not all that big. I mean, it's a 44 millimeter diver. It's not exactly small, but this isn't like a Leviathan on the wrist by any means. This you could easily make this your daily watch. It's contemporary. This one actually isn't. This is the older version. The newer ones strangely look more vintage, like this, but a very different style. This is the opposite of a chronograph. It's time and date, tons of water resistance. It's sort of the counterpart to the Navitimer. If the Navitimer was built for the skies and doing all of this stuff with the slide rule and little water resistance at 30 meters, this takes it in the other direction. Minimum, you get 10 times the depth rating with 300 meters or 1,000 if you really want to go out. And yet it's still a time and date watch. Functionally, kind of the total opposite.
Absolutely, and I feel like Breitling stays true to their being of like, this is a tool watch. This is meant to perform, right? Like, it's meant to go into the toughest places. never fail, never waver, and I mean, I think it looks great on top of it. But that is that's first and foremost, right? Like, it is meant to function and perform flawlessly.
And they have other collections, but I think if you had to distill Breitling's entire catalog down to the most popular Breitling watches, the most famous, most iconic, it's Navitimer, Chronomat, Superocean.
Yeah.
Yes, of course, there's the Breitling Premier. The Avenger is a highly popular one as well. They've got the Endurance Pro, but the Emergency, if that's your thing. But
it's my thing.
I love the Emergency.
I love the Emergency. We'll have to talk about that one on a different.
They make tools. They make tools, and
exactly.
I think all of these were informed by doing something, even if it was to be able to do a lot. And I think that's one of the cool parts about Breitling.
So that's their line. Can we talk about Breitling as an investment on kind of where to steer, where to maybe steer away from?
I mean, Breitling's an interesting brand because unlike Rolex, where it's like often on the pre-owned market, they're just going to cost more than retail and you can't find them at retail. You can often find the Breitling you want at retail, not that hard. It's just going to cost so much more than if you were to buy that same watch pre-owned. And then, of course, once you look at some of the older references like that Superocean, you can really get a great deal on them. But I think that is an important part. If your prime objective is value retention, buying Breitling brand new with the exception of a handful of models probably isn't the wisest move. And again, that's only if you're thinking about value retention or return on investment.
Right.
If you just wanted to buy it and keep it, doesn't really matter. But a lot of the time, the Breitlings will be less expensive on the pre-owned market, even if it's a current production model like this Navitimer. You could buy this brand new. You could buy it pre-owned, it will cost less pre-owned, and you couldn't say the same thing about a Rolex Daytona.
Right, and I mean, I feel like spoiled isn't the right word, but we've been shifted over the past 5 or 10 years now where, it's like Rolex used to be you could buy a Daytona and it was a good investment insofar as you weren't losing a bunch of money on it. You could sell it for probably almost what you got it for if you held on to it long enough. You could make some money, whatever. Now we live in this world where if you can buy one at retail, you're making money. Day one, you're making money. And that's not really how the entire watch world works, right?
No, it's the rare exceptions. It's also not a constant. Markets change, and this is all based on consumer preference. Most of the time, the pre-owned watches are going to be more affordable than the new ones, and that's very true for Breitling in most instances. There's certain limited editions, vintage models where obviously that doesn't hold up. But I think if for those who want the best value for the money, most watch per dollar, pre-owned market's probably the best place. And just like any luxury watch, there's oodles of counterfeits and Franken, so you obviously want to buy from, if you get a good deal, make sure you're getting it from a legit place. But I think when it comes to value retention as well, there's certain models that they're not going to it's not like they don't hold their value as well, they just might not be as liquid, or you might have to just be really sure that you like what you're buying because some of them aren't necessarily for everybody. Breitling, to be clear, Breitling is a luxury watch manufacturer and fantastic at doing that. So there's no bad Breitling watches, but not all Breitlings are for all people.
That's what I was going to say is, if you're looking for something, if you're not sure about it, you're not necessarily buying it for an investment, but you want to do the best you can, sticking to those top models, like in Navitimer, there's a big market for a Navitimer, the Superocean, the Chronomat, all those I think are pretty, they're pretty popular as a whole, and you probably have a better chance moving one of those if you change your mind or decide to move on in the future than you would on some of the other models, like the more specific things, like we're talking about the Breitling for Bentley.
Yeah.
There's a smaller group of people. I mean, just based on the size, right?
Yeah, I mean, the size is a big one. So if you're buying a new watch, you can go to the retailer, see them all there, try them on, figure it out. But when you're buying discontinued models or on the pre-owned market, you may not be able to see them in person, and Breitling makes some really big watches.
Yeah.
This isn't a brand where like anything is going to fit anyone's wrist. We're all in between like 36, 40 millimeters. They have some giant ones, and so you might like the look of one, but if I had to wear this would look laughably large on me. This is a huge watch, and that's not to say it's a bad watch, but for someone like myself, that big of a size. So I think if you're buying a Breitling, especially online, if you don't have a chance to see it, just pay attention to the case size. Again, not a bad watch, but as we mentioned, there's some that you're going to want to look out for, or you might want to avoid. If you've got small wrists, avoid the giant ones.
Right, and that's just, it's narrowing your market, right? I have a 7-inch wrist. It's a very average size wrist, and I don't feel like a lot of watches are too big for me. This is too big for me.
Mine's about half an inch smaller, and if you want to see that on my wrist, it looks like I've just stolen it from a larger man. Like this doesn't fit. It doesn't even wrap around. And again, not because it's a bad watch. I just have small wrists, and it is inappropriately sized for my wrist. The same would be true if I tried on pants of an NBA player.
Yeah.
Great pants, but like they just don't
Just
fit
not
me.
for you. And then there's some other ones that are kind of like the more niche-y.
As you mentioned, co-branded. This is a Breitling for Bentley. If you don't love Breitling and Bentley, this might not be the watch for you.
Right.
And they have a lot of those co-branded ones. They've got all of the classic car series. They've got some in collaboration with professional athletes. They have the whole NFL series, one for each team. Don't buy the Chargers watch if you're not a Chargers fan. I think that
and when
goes
you go
without.
to sell it, you're selling it to a Chargers fan.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So if you bought a Breitling for Bentley, you might have the Bentley, but if you wanted to ever sell it, you're probably going to be looking for a Breitling collector who also owns a Bentley.
Good things to keep in mind. Personally, I'm probably not the most qualified to speak about the investments because I don't really like to buy watches as like an investment.
No, I just keep them. You're the same. We hoard them.
I've just about never sold a watch, So.
And I think and value retention is a big thing, and equally important to that is the price you get into it. And one that people might want to avoid is. The Breitling models, so they didn't always use in-house movements. That's a more recent development with like the B01, and now they have their standard three-hander. But if you go back a little bit, and even in their current production lineup, there's a lot of ETA and Sellita-based movements. There's nothing wrong with those watches. I specifically bought an ETA-based Breitling, but the price delta between an ETA and an in-house when purchased at retail isn't as large as it's going to be on the pre-owned market. So if you wanted ETA-based Breitling, you can go get that watch at a very good price on the pre-owned market, where something like a contemporary Superocean with an off-the-shelf Sellita, obviously it's chronometer certified. This is several notches above what you get that same caliber in a different watch. But if someone's looking for the most value retention, buying a brand new Breitling with an off-the-shelf movement, probably not gonna be the best. If you bought that same watch or another one with that same movement on the pre-owned market, like I said, there's nothing wrong with these movements. I chose one specifically, but I also bought this pre-owned. This one's from.
And you didn't necessarily buy it for an investment.
No. I plan on never selling this watch, but if I did, I paid the right price for it. I'm not going to end up super upside down.
One day when you decide it's too big, I'll probably pick it up from you. And
I'm just going to gain weight, Justin. It's never going to gain big. I'm going to grow into it.
That's a good point. Those are great. They're great movements. There's nothing wrong with them, and there's a lot of good reasons to choose those. And I think you've made some of those. As an investment, it's something to consider, and it might not be the best if your investment is at the top of your priorities when purchasing a new Breitling.
Yeah, and also I guess if you want something that is exclusive to Breitling, only available from Breitling, the most expression of Breitling, an off-the-shelf movement may not be the best. This uses a 7750. This is one of the most common automatic chronograph movements. You can find it in a wide variety of brands at a big range of prices. Something like the B01, yes, a version of it has been licensed to Tudor, but it's not the same as this exact movement. So if you wanted the most Breitling, get the Navitimer with the in-house movement. This is a full Breitling creation rather than a Breitling watch that uses a third-party movement. And again, nothing wrong with the third-party movements. They're less expensive to service, more options when it comes to service, but buying them new, you really have to kind of make sure that's exactly what you want, because if you do end up flipping it, you're probably not going to get the same money back as if you had bought an in-house.
That's a very good point. All right, we talked a lot about different models, talked a lot about investments. Let's pick some.
Yeah.
So,
as mentioned, the best Breitling for one person is not going to be the best Breitling for another.
But how about I give you some categories and you pick a watch for them?
Perfect.
Let's start with the Pilot.
Okay, so the Pilot is kind of complicated because the Navitimer was made for pilots. It has an analog flight computer on it, but what I would argue is the Navitimer, if you're actually trying to use your Navitimer because all of your cockpit, everything has gone dark, there's no electricity in the plane, that is a worst case scenario, and you're probably just trying to land the plane. You're not worried about fuel consumption or anything like that. I mean, the Navitimer is a safe bet, but actually for pilots, like working pilot, I would choose the Avenger GMT.
That's a good one.
And
GMT is really useful for pilot.
Exactly. Yep. For that reason, you get the 2 time zones, but it's also, you get a lot more water resistance and just a more durable package. It's easier to read. It's a very uncluttered dial. Yeah. You can have, I guess, an independently adjustable 2-hour hands for that, but you also have the bezel you can turn if you got a quick layover or you're trying to communicate with, someone. It just makes a lot more sense. Again, this is if you don't want a chronograph, but the Avenger is such like a multi-purpose, and you can get a chronograph version if you want that as well, but I would go for the GMT.
Okay.
Avenger GMT for the pilot.
That's a good answer.
Yeah, not the obvious one, but yeah.
Yeah, the Navitimer is on the nose. I'm going to say the Navitimer, and you're probably right. That's actually more functional and a better choice, but I'm going to say Navitimer. I like it. I think maybe it's just me. Maybe it's just if I'm a pilot, I'm choosing the Navitimer. But
one of us has to say the Navitimer.
Right.
But like this is the Avengers GMT is like the less obvious one.
Yeah,
the Navitimer is the quintessential Breitling pilot's watch.
Yeah, absolutely.
But the Avenger GMT, or you could get the Avenger Chrono if you want the chronograph. But I think that's an overlooked line.
I agree. Okay, let's go next. Let's go down. Let's say for the diver.
I mean, obviously, let's go Superocean.
I'm gonna agree on that one.
The Superocean. And honestly, how deep of diving you can go can kind of dictate it. If you're more the type that's going to be doing some just recreational diving and going to be hanging out by like the cabana pool, you can just get like a Superocean Heritage even. You can get one of the more vintage leaning ones. It still has 300 meters of water resistance. You won't even need half of that. But if you wanted to go full commercial diver, 1,000 meters helium escape valve, like you don't really need to worry about water.
There's definitely
with that
capable options. Yeah, great. I love that one. Let's talk about for maybe how about the guys into vintage? Vintage lover.
Well, you can get a vintage Breitling, but
which I love vintage Breitlings.
I do too. Like a vintage Navitimer is gorgeous, but I like anything vintage. It's more to care for. It's it's not going to ever come with a warranty.
Right.
You might not like the sizing. Some of them were a bit small.
I mean, to be fair, we're talking about modern watches here. So while yes, if you're into vintage, a vintage Breitling is a fantastic choice.
But I would say the Premier. For the vintage lovers who want like vintage vibes, but all the conveniences of a modern watch, and the worry-free and the proportions to go with it. I love the Premier. This is a really sleeper collection as a whole, in my opinion. It's like Breitling's dress watch, for lack of a better word. Vintage styled. It's still a Breitling. It's gorgeous, but when you look at the like hyper burly designs most people think of, the Premier is lovely. This one with the champagne dial, I think, is gorgeous.
It's a really pretty watch.
And it's so not what people think of when they think of a Breitling. It's a great way to enjoy the brand, or and not feel like you just chose the obvious choice. Or if you already have a Navitimer and a Superocean and a Chronomat and all the other ones, this is definitively different, still within the Breitling family. And honestly, it's so much dressier. I wouldn't necessarily wear a Super Avenger with a suit, but like, I think this is pretty classy, despite being a chronograph.
Yeah, absolutely. And I like that. I like that it has the vintage vibe without being just a copy or reissue of a vintage watch, right? It has the design language, but still stays modern. It's a great watch. I love it. I would wear it anytime.
And you don't really sacrifice much functionality. It's still a chronograph. You still have a tachymeter around on the outside of the dial. Lovely display case back to see through it. It's still very functional, but it's a lot more refined than the tool watch vibes we see from Breitling. So I think that's a great one if you want vintage but don't want actually an old watch.
I do too. Okay, last one. Let's talk about the, let's call it an adventurer. The outdoorsman, the adventurer,
Okay, so like any of these could be the adventurer watch. If you want to be the outdoorsman, and you are in aquatic environments, go with a Superocean. Any of these would be fine for the adventurer. I'm going to replace adventurer almost with like athlete adventure, where there's like it's more than just like on the idle hike. You might be doing something that's timed, or you might be like a triathlon. Something. I would go for the Endurance Pro. Breitling made this watch specifically for athletes, but it's also a really practical thing. So even if you're not like training for a sport and just need a rugged, lightweight watch, it's made out of Breitling's carbon composite material. So it's super light. It's a quartz chronograph. Still a chronometer, so it is more accurate than your average quartz watch, but it's also the least expensive Breitling at a retail level. Super accurate and durable because it is quartz. You get a compass bezel for those who, I guess if you're outdoors and want to do some solar navigation, and then you get a pulsometer along the inside. So for the athlete who wants to check their pulse and doesn't want to feel like they're wearing a smartwatch, I think this gives you a lot of, it's not going to ever be as functional as like your Apple Watch, but I think this gives you a really practical watch that's still a Breitling, still executed to a very high standard, and like my Chronomat is very heavy. It's a lot of steel. This is so light. Even the buckle is made out of bright light.
Yeah. I agree, 100%. I was hoping you'd choose this one because that's what I would choose.
And they make it in so many different colors. There's collaborations. They do these in collaboration with the Ironman, like the famous triathlon race. They do these dedicated to different
teams.
schools.
Yes.
Yeah, like a lot of the big universities.
Right.
They make these in 2 different sizes now. This is obviously the larger one. So many different colors. It's really one where you can get it to like match your sports team or your school or your other outdoor gear. I think it's a really practical Breitling.
It is, and I have to say, when I first saw this one, I saw photos of it, saw it online. It was okay. I didn't love it. I didn't hate it. It was just okay. It wasn't until seeing it in person and actually wearing it and spending some time with it that it really grew on me. Because like you said, it feels like nothing. It's just so light. And then you put it on and wear it, you forget that you're wearing it. And I spend a lot of time outdoors, camping and fishing and hiking and all that stuff. This is exactly what I want. I like the fact that it's quartz. I throw it on. It's the right time. It works. It goes everywhere, underwater, in the dirt, up trees, wherever I'm going, it's going. It's a great one, and it took me a little bit to kind of get on board with it. But yeah, once I actually gave it some wrist time, man, I really enjoy this piece.
It feels really light, but it doesn't feel cheap. And
Exactly.
I think that's a big thing. There's a lot of lightweight watches and they feel cheap, but when you pick it up, you're like, oh, this is really light. It's not really made out of metal except these small, like the pushers or whatnot. But then you turn the bezel and it's smooth. There's no real like play. It's just really nice.
Very refined.
Yeah, it's got a sapphire crystal, and then it also just does stuff from a functional perspective that you're not going to get with a mechanical chronograph. So it's technically like a split. So if you hit the bottom pusher while it's running, it'll stop the hands. When you hit it again, they'll catch up to the natural position. It makes a lot more sense for those like actual athletic timing capabilities than to do that with a mechanical chronograph is very, very expensive.
Right.
So if you actually plan to use,
and trying to,
and it also goes for more accurate than a second. That we're tracking tenths of seconds as well. So it just makes look how fast that's moving. It feels different. They didn't just make a quartz Breitling chronograph. They sort of retooled the chronograph to be a contemporary sports watch. And again, this goes back to as long as Breitling's been around, tool watches have been a big vertical in their catalog.
Absolutely. So I think we've kind of circled around and arrived. There's no one option for everyone, but there's lots of good options depending on who you're at or who you are and what you're looking for. And if you're looking for more of an investment or a style or a performance and functionality, there's a lot of good stuff. There is.
And I mean, again, there's no bad Breitlings, but given the diversity of the collection, the diversity in sizes alone and styles, I think finding one is harder than, saying, buying a Rolex, where they're all going to be kind of around the same size, these very long-standing styles. A lot of this can be a bit more polarizing, and the person who's going to gravitate towards the Endurance Pro is like the antithesis of the person who wants the Premier. So, and that's not to say the same person can't have both.
I was going to say, I'll take both of them.
Yeah, I'm going to wear this when I'm dressed normally, and I'm going to wear this when I'm hanging out in the woods. So I think that's that's the strength of Breitling's catalog. It can also make shopping for one more difficult. In your opinion, what is the most iconic Breitling?
Navitimer. For me, I want a white dial Navitimer on a thick leather strap. That's it. That's what I want. I'm happy.
I'd go black, but yeah.
Black, yeah. Okay. I mean, we're talking just preferences here, but yeah. I think for me, that's the king. It's kind of hard to say because there's so many good Superoceans. You know what I mean? There's so much other stuff.
I think the thing with it is its styles never change. The Superocean has gone through different styles. It used to look like this, then it looked like this, then it went back to looking like this. The Chronomat had a major overhaul in the 80s. The Navitimer, it's changed for sure, but it's basically been instantly recognizable as a Navitimer for over half a century, and it will remain that way.
And I don't need it or use it, or I will never use the slide rule bezel. I don't care. I like it. I love the history. I love the style and the look, and just everything that comes with it.
So the Navitimer is the most iconic, but I'd also say it's the most popular. Like there's certain brands that have a really iconic watch, and it's synonymous with the brand, but it's sort of fallen out of favor, or not popular in certain markets. The Navitimer is really, really popular.
It is. I would say the Navitimer is probably their most popular model, right? And then behind that, you have the Chronomat, Superocean, and then maybe Avenger behind those two.
I would agree.
I'm
I
not
think
positive on that. It's a little bit of speculation here, but we deal with them a lot, and that's kind of what I feel is like their most popular models.
Yeah, I would just say, but yeah, without a doubt, the Navitimer is the most popular. And it's not just because it's the most recognizable. I think when people want to get a Breitling, it is the most iconic. And because of that, if they're looking for something that's emblematic of the brand, they're going to get the Navitimer. And so, yes, it's the most popular Breitling. It's the most iconic Breitling. And I would also say that it would probably be one of the best to buy as an investment. Especially like some of the vintage ones go for crazy money.
Right, I agree, yeah, and it is. I mean, kind of some of the things we spoke about earlier where there's just a bigger market for it. It seems to be their headliner model. There's just a lot that goes into playing that, but I agree. I think that, if you had to choose one model without getting any more granular as the best investment, I would probably say the Navitimer.
Yeah, you won't get as good of a deal on them compared to, like, say, an older Superocean when buying on the pre-owned market, and that's because they retain their value pretty well. And of course, they're typically a chronograph. It's a more complex movement and all of that, but there exists somewhat more of a price floor for Navitimers than I see for other Breitling collections. Sometimes you can find a screaming deal on an older Chronomat, like what I did, and it's got an ETA movement. It's an older discontinued model, but I don't see those screaming deals really present for Navitimers.
I agree.
Some are worth a lot of money, but for the most part, they seem to hold their value pretty well. And if you get into one for the right price, like on the pre-owned market, it kind of just holds constant. Might make a little money, might lose a little money, but it's not. There's not going to be any radical fluctuations in its price.
Okay, I got one more. I think sometimes people aren't exactly clear on who Breitling is and what they do. I've been asked a couple times on it, like, is Breitling a high-end watch? Are they, is it a luxury watch? Is it a high-end watch? Is it with, Rolex and all the Swiss brands or whatever? What's your take on that?
Absolutely. I'm shocked it's even a question. And I think maybe some of it might just be the notoriety of Breitling. People see their stores at, their boutiques at airports, malls, and all of that. It's easy to sort of gloss over. It's like, oh, this is something for the massive. It's like, no, they're just a really big luxury brand. The same thing you see Rolex, you see Tag, all luxury companies. I would place Breitling above Tag.
Right.
Yeah, they're one of like the blue chip big luxury brands, and there isn't a bad watch on it. I would never buy the Bentley for myself because it's inappropriately sized for my wrist, and I just don't own a Bentley.
Right.
This is a very well made watch.
Yeah, absolutely.
I might have problems with its design as far as ergonomics
Aesthetics
on my
or
wrist.
Or whatever, but it's
very well made.
Nice watch.
Yeah.
I think people, Breitling's not one of those brands that if you have no experience with watches that like, you find someone who has zero experience in watches and you ask them about Rolex, they'll have something to tell you. You know what I mean? They know. Breitling, it isn't quite the same. But to your point, I think they're absolutely a high-end watch, and a blue chip is a great way to put it.
And here's another thing about Breitling. Similar to Rolex, everything is chronometer certified now. So whether you're getting a quartz watch like the Endurance Pro, it is a chronometer certified quartz watch, an automatic chronograph like the BO1, three-handed, even a Sellita-based chrono or three-handed is still going to be chronometer certified. That means it's been independently tested and certified by the COSC. That isn't something that all brands do.
No.
You can't say every Omega is chronometer certified. You can't say every Tag. Most brands you can't say. That's kind of the rare exceptions. And that's very true for Breitling. Every single one's got a chronometer movement, quartz or not. And that really is a commitment to the level of
absolutely
perfectionism they have. And also, if you loop the dials are always done really well. You might not like the way it looks, but the printing and everything's done really neatly. So absolutely a high-end brand, and arguably a victim of their own success in that regard, because people see them so commonly and think they're less premium than they are. But no, they're just very successful.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, this was great. I feel like, we've gone over a lot of things, a lot of models, a lot of options, a lot of choices, a lot of decisions. Makes me want to buy another Breitling, but
yeah, enter the club, buddy.
I got lots of good choices.
Well, there you have it. This is not all of the Breitling watches they make. The Emergency, that is going to have to be its whole other video. It has an antenna that extends out and calls for help for you, but we're not going to unpack that now. I think this is proof, though, that whether you want to go new, pre-owned, in-house movement, off-the-shelf movement, you're going to be getting a good watch. It just comes down to find the best Breitling for you might not be the best for someone else. And to get the best Breitling watch for you, you're probably going to want to pay attention to certain things like case size, if it's a collaboration, what the watch was made for. If you dive a lot, probably not a Navitimer.
Right.
And then also just a lot of it's, at the end of the day, it's all personal preferences.
It is. A couple key points to consider, like you said, you know, the kind of more niche-y watches are something to factor in if you're looking more towards an investment. Case size, design, collaborations, all those things. Outside of that, you're right, it's a lot of personal preference, and the nice part is there's not a lot of places to miss. You know what I mean? Like everyone's kind of choose a little bit different, but you can't really miss no matter what you choose.
And the diversity in the collection is such, if you buy one and then decide you want something else, you can buy another Breitling and not just have like two of the same watch.
Exact thing, yeah.
So what would you pick?
For me,
for your actual lifestyle, not the one you like, the one of the best, the one that if you had to wear it all day every day for the next like 5 years.
Go Navitimer. I like this blue Navitimer. I like this one. I like that it's a little smaller, even though I love a big watch. I just think it's a really good look. And you know, you talk about the dials, like this dial is gorgeous, right? I mean,
yeah, I love the Navitimer.
What are you
I'm
going with?
so tempted to get this Premier because I love the champagne dial, but I'm doing too many stupid things that would probably damage. I need some more water resistance. I'd go with the Chronomat.
It's good too.
But more importantly, which one would you choose? Obviously, not all Breitlings are for all people, but there is going to be one for you. So tell us in the comments which one of these Breitling collections you would choose. And if you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like and subscribe, and head over to bobswatches.com to see the rest of our inventory.